Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Men for the Win is sponsored by the Grand Group with Edina Realty. Are you looking to purchase a new home in the Twin Cities area? Or perhaps you're trying to sell your current home? Whether you're upsizing or downsizing, the Grand Group with Edina Realty will meet all of your housing needs. Contact the Grand Group by emailing thegran, that's G-R-A-N, group, at edinarealty.com, or call them by phone at 612-817-8751. The Grand Group with Edina Realty, 7-time Minneapolis-St. Paul Magazine Super Agent Award winners.
On this episode, David and Dan recap the Twins' 3-game series against the Kansas City Royals. Thanks for listening. Enjoy. Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win. My name is David Kufis. With me, as always, is Dan Thompson. The Twins take 2 of 3 from the Kansas City Royals at home at Target Field with a whole bunch of rookie pitchers, Dan, who, I gotta be honest, I'm having trouble keeping track of who's up, who's down, who's a starter, who's a long reliever. What is happening with this roster, Dan?
I know, it's quite the rotation of just guys that are being called up literally for like a game. Like Scott Blewett was brought up and then released after that, or designated for assignment. I don't know where these guys land. Some of them land back in St. Paul and some don't. Randy Dobnak is gone again to make room for somebody. I don't know. It is very weird. There are so many shuffled guys. I feel like I know that 6 or 7 guys are pitching, and after that, it could be anybody.
I wanted to mention this, Dan. You know, most of the time I'm watching games on delay. I'm pretty rarely watching them live. And folks, you can always tell when I'm watching them live because I'm probably tweeting about it as it's happening. But most of the time I'm off of Twitter, I'm off of Facebook, I'm off of anywhere that could spoil the scores for me. Well, Tuesday night was date night, so I wasn't watching the game, obviously. I was out to dinner with my wife, and I was planning to, after the kids went to bed, I was going to flip the game on, and I was all excited. I made a mistake. I saw the score. I was quite frustrated with myself, but I'm thinking, but still, you know, I can see what Zebby Matthews did. And then, Dan, wouldn't you know, because I thought the score was spoiled, I started scrolling Facebook. And the freaking Twins Daily had Zebby's line right in front of me. So, like, not only did I have the score of the game spoiled, so I knew what was going to happen, I also knew how well Zebby pitched, and I was so annoyed.
That was the great mystery and excitement of that baseball game, as we'll get to. So I'm sorry that was ruined. This is all coming back to that time you ruined the game for the Red Sox, man, coming out of the library. David,
it's shocking. I will never forget that memory, I think, as long as I live.
Well, last thing, speaking of things being spoiled, so my wife and I did finally finish Ted Lasso season 3, and I know we've talked about this. Well, maybe you and I haven't talked about it on the air. We've talked about it off the air at length. This is the reason, though, that I think that you would like Ted Lasso, David.
What drama, what a game, what a finish.
If you can imagine listening to any variety of soccer calls, like, I think your favorite part about soccer is the announcers, and the announcing on that show when they do play soccer is fantastic. And so I just think you should give it just one more shot. You're all about Wrexham now. You're all about, I mean, you like other things.
But it's
you
real.
like IndyCar racing or the other one, the European version.
F1, the best drivers in the world, Dan, the 20 best drivers in the world. Anyway, we are far off topic. Let's go ahead and jump into the series recap.
Series recap.
Game 1, Dan, couldn't have started any better for the Twins. They come away with this one 8-3. Pablo Lopez is on the mound, and he's really the only guy, right? He's the only guy who we expected to be in this rotation who pitched in this series, and he does okay. He doesn't look like he did last year where he was absolutely dominant in August and September, but he goes 6 innings pitched, 3 runs, 2 of them earned, 5 strikeouts with 1 homer given up. It's not a bad line. I think we take that just about every time, no?
I think so, especially against a Royals team that does hit pretty well. We should also note, this is fun to have meaningful series against the Royals. This doesn't happen very often where both of these teams are good, but the Royals are going to be good as long as they have Bobby Witt Jr., I think. He starts the game with a solo home run, so the Royals are up 1-0. Top of the second, MJ Melendez reaches on a Ryan Jeffers catcher interference call, and then the Royals are able to string together a couple more singles to score another run, so it's 2-0, but the Twins certainly answered in the bottom of the second.
Yeah, finally, the dormant Twins offense, who could not figure it out against the Guardians, they awaken, Dan, when there's 2 outs on the board. Santana walks, Jeffers singles, Martin singles, Castro then with the big bopper here, a 3-run homer, followed up, Dan. They're not done. There's 2 outs, mind you, which is just like, it's hard to explain that feeling because it just feels like this is going to come to an end. It has to come to an end. There's 2 outs. You know, 1 out is not difficult to record. Apparently it is, Dan, because then Larnach singles and then Royce Lewis hits a 2-run shot. So Twins score 6 runs with 2 outs and they lead after 2, 6-2. So then we hit the top of the 5th here. Pablo Lopez hits Bobby Witt Jr. high. Bobby Witt stays in the game, he seems fine, but it was sort of a weird moment because right now, hitting Bobby Witt Jr., that's hitting Mike Trout, that's hitting Ohtani, that's hitting Freeman, right? Like, that is hitting a top guy in Acuna Jr., right? Like, that's hitting a guy who really matters to the sport of baseball, and I think everyone in Target Field sort of felt that, because it got real quiet, Dan. And normally, like, if a guy is hit up high, it's normally typically quiet, like whether it's the home team or the away team. But my goodness, Dan, there was a weird, eerie feeling in that moment.
Well, we talked earlier about one time when Bobby Witt Jr. got hit. I think it was by the Diamondbacks, and like Salvi Perez was ready to charge the mound, and like nobody wants Salvi coming after him. So maybe that was a little bit part of it.
It's good that he has those bad knees, though. He wouldn't be that hard to take down, I don't think.
I'm not dead.
Top of the sixth, then MJ Melendez hits a double, followed by an Adam Frazier RBI single. Twins still lead this one then 6-3. And then the bottom of the seventh, Twins tack on a couple of more. Larnach walks. Lewis reaches on a rare Bobby Witt error, but to be fair, he was, he got hit in the head. What are you going to say? But then a Wallner RBI single scores Larnach, and Twins lead 7-3. And then a Manny Margot sac fly scores Lewis, and that finishes off the scoring for the Twins, leading it 8-3. That's how it finishes. Quick note, Jax Richards and Scott Blewett, who you mentioned, Dan, finish out the game, only allowing a combined 2 hits in 7, 8, and 9. And then Blewett, I don't know that we'll ever see him again. Also, how funny is that name? For every blown save, I know, it's a pun. I get it.
It's like a pun. It's a play on words.
You just walked right into it, Goofus. I love it. Thank you. I did want to say a couple things. I think that it was really important that the Twins tacked on those extra runs when they had the opportunities here, because then you're keeping the top arms of the Royals bullpen off of the field. So that's what you have to do. When they're not bringing their high leverage guys in, you got to make them pay. Then we get into game 2. This was the one that was spoiled for you. The Twins win this 13-3. It's a memorable game for Zebby Matthews. His first inning, actually, he strikes out Bobby Witt Jr., which has got to be so cool. We're going to talk more about that a little bit later. And the Twins give him some help. In the bottom of the first 4 Twins reach as they score 3 runs. Castro doubles. Lewis knocks him in with a single. Wallner doubles. And then Miranda reaches on an error by Michael Garcia that really could have, sealed up that inning pretty neatly for the Royals. But instead, it's 3-0 Twins.
Yeah, and then top of the second, then MJ Melendez, Dan, who is just all over this series. He hits a solo shot to get KC on the board. They still trail 3-1. And then the bottom of the third, the Twins get the run back on an RBI double by Miranda. And my goodness, Dan, Miranda looked so good, and it's so great to see because he has really struggled since the All-Star break.
Yeah, he finished 3 for 5. He tripled later in the game. And then also the Twins scored runs in the next 4 innings after that. So that was highlighted by a Vazquez home run. We're going to talk about him later. A couple bases loaded hits in the bottom of the 5th. A 3-run home run by Kepler, which was really nice to see. And then Kyle Farmer hits a home run, his first of the year. And I loved this. The Twins gave him the silent treatment as he came back to the dugout. And so then nobody kind of congratulated him about 15 seconds in. And then they finally piled on. But that was pretty cool. I'm going to talk a little more about Farmer a little bit later. But Zebby Matthews, 5 innings, 2 earned runs, 5 strikeouts. His big thing is that he doesn't walk people, and he didn't in this game either. Gets the win, 77 pitches, 49 strikes. He was protected a bit by Rocco. And then from there, the bullpen holds it out.
Yeah, Okert allows a solo shot to Salvi Perez because Perez cannot be held back, Dan. But then Thielbar pitches a clean inning, which is remarkable. And then Winder, Dan, who I don't know what he's done also. Maybe he's also made a trip to Driveline, but he has been phenomenal as of late. And so he pitches 2 innings clean to finish out the game. Again, Kepler, great game here. It's his first 3-hit game since July 5th. He has 4 RBI in this game, which ties a season high. And it's his first RBI since August 3rd. But August 3rd isn't like that long ago, is it, Dan?
I know, but it's like 11 days. That's like enough where you would think a guy like Kepler is going to knock in a run.
Yeah, you're right. He probably should have knocked in a run by then. He was getting sort of torn apart on Twins Twitter also. And then he kind of had this game, so it was sort of funny to watch people walk away with their tails between their legs.
One other last note about this is about Kansas City starter Seth Lugo. His ERA climbed above 3 for the first time all season. And the first time he didn't finish 5 innings all year. He was pulled in the 5th, allowed 7 earned runs, 9 hits, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts. So a great win for the Twins to give him a little bit more space because game 3 didn't go as well.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but I have to say, watching Kansas City's rotation, that's supposedly one of the better ones in baseball, Dan, get absolutely dismantled by this Twins offense that didn't have Carlos Correa and didn't have a healthy Byron Buxton was really fun to see and just gave me a little bit more confidence. I do think there is this large mental barrier, Dan, that you mentioned at the beginning of the episode. It's August, and the Royals and Twins are playing each other, and we care about the outcome of the game, Dan. It's fantastic.
Real quick, we can run through game 3. Top of the second, the Royals get on the board first, 1-0. Louis Varland started this game for the Twins. I think he had a decent outing. We'll talk about that after a bit. Top of the third, Bobby Witt Jr. hits another home run, his 24th, and I think he's hit 12 against the Twins this season, so it's 2-0. That pitch was way high out of the zone, too. This was not one of your middle pitches, David, that you like to talk about so much. The bottom of the fourth, the Twins do get on the board with a solo home run by Carlos Santana. It's 2-1. Big moment is the bottom of the fifth. Twins loaded them up. Royce comes up with 2 outs, bases loaded, but he grounds out the short, so it's 2-1 Royals. The Royals added runs in the 6th and the 7th. They finished 2 for 11 with runners in scoring position. So I think this game could have been worse. I think this was definitely one the Royals outplayed the Twins. Twins were just 1 for 5 with runners in scoring position. And I thought Varland was fine. 6 innings, 3 earned runs, 8 hits, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts. He's yet to win this year. He's 0-5. But the Twins finished with 7 hits, don't draw any walks. Royals have 11 hits and 4 walks.
I don't think that the no wins is really accurate. Like, I think had the Twins offense showed up in a couple of these Varland starts, he should have a couple of wins on the record books. But again, it just goes to show, Dan, that the win-loss calculation that MLB uses makes no sense, and they should switch to our system. Now, I don't know who would get the loss in this one because the Twins only scored 1 run, so it would probably go on Varland. But I've said this once, I've said it 1,000 times, I do not care if a guy gives up 3 runs if he gets through 6 innings. This offense should be able to score more than 3 runs, and the back end of the bullpen should be able to put clean innings on the board.
Well, and you mentioned the back end of the bullpen. Duran came in here and he pitched an inning, and then Richards and Okert came in. But it was, again, maybe one of those spots where Rocco needed to keep Duran warmed up, and so he had to throw him in there at some point. And then as far as the standings go, the Twins actually did lose ground on the Guardians here. They're 4.5 back now. Twins are 67 and 53, but they did create a little more space over the Royals, who are 66 and 55, a game and a half back there. The Tigers have fallen back even farther, and then lest we forget, the White Sox are 29 and 93. They are 43 and a half games back in the AL Central standings.
But they're still in it for the wild card, Dan.
All right, let's push forward to Puckett's Picks winner.
Touch 'em all, Kirby Puckett! Puckett's Picks winner.
I just like it when the world works the way it should work, Dan. And this is just one of those times where Royce Lewis fell to me. I finally got to pick him, and he got me the victory, as things should be.
His streak of consistency, though, is pretty remarkable. The guy doesn't slump, but it seems like when he slumps, it's never when you've picked him. It's always when the listeners have picked him.
Do you know, Dan, this is the first time I've gotten to pick Royce Lewis.
Really?
I haven't got to pick him all season. All year. I went back and I
take it back.
I was like,
he never falls to you then. I think
what
you would
I'm
have
saying.
taken him if you've had a chance.
It's never happened. It's the first time I've taken him. I absolutely love it, Dan.
Well, you do get the bonus point. Royce Lewis had 10 points to lead the Twins. Hoax picked Vazquez, who we learned something. So Vazquez finished second here with 6 points. Apparently, and this was he talked about this with the media after one of these games here, when the Twins were in Seattle, and this was at like the lowest point of Christian Vazquez's time. We were all calling for him to be cut, traded, whatever. He went where careers go to revive. He went to Driveline, which driving in there, like there must be Willy Wonka music, like there must be gold walking in, and everybody just feels a little bit happier, David.
Did I not say last episode that something had to happen? There's no way he just started to be better at baseball again. Like that just doesn't happen. And I am so happy that you texted this and you didn't hide it from me, knowing that I would gloat a bit here, Dan, that I said something had to happen because there's no way this miraculous turnaround came because he had a fortune cookie that said he was going to get better at baseball.
No, he went to Driveline. Anyway, so Vazquez was 6 points. I picked Wallner with 4. My birthday buddy didn't quite come through, but he doesn't get enough at bats. I feel like he hasn't gotten the Kepler treatment where he actually gets to play against lefties. The listeners picked Buxton, who finished with -1 point. Now, he played part of game 1, and then he left with some hip discomfort. But Rocco is again being cagey here, David.
Yeah, this is the Twins' MO. They never want to tell us the truth about injuries ever, how severe they are, where they're located, what sort of bilateral weakness he's dealing with.
Well, hold on. We know where it's located. We know it's in his right hip. And it's like they give us those clinical details. They just don't tell us the important thing, which is how long is he going to be out of the lineup?
It's a bilateral hip weakness, I think is what he's dealing with. I don't know. I'd be shocked if he doesn't go on the IL at this point, if he says that he's dealing with discomfort. I don't understand doctors at all, Dan. I don't understand MRI machines. And it's this whole bit about how, the MRI was clean. And it's like, well, okay, that's fine. Shouldn't he be fine then?
I don't believe that man's ever been to medical school.
They all use the word clean, like all the journalists, because that's what the word they were given. I don't know, David. What even is an MRI anymore? I don't understand.
It doesn't make any sense to me. Side note, how on earth do you have your sounders organized that it takes you an hour to find any of them?
Sorry.
Dan?
Some of them are alphabetical, some of them aren't. I'm sure there's a way here, but I haven't figured it out. Anyway.
I can't get over it. Every time I see you looking for a sounder, it's like a beautiful mind over there. You're trying to figure out where the button is. Where's the code? I'm sure I can break it.
Are like onions.
That's for you. I found that one pretty fast.
Touche.
Well, season standings, David, you still have the lead, 19.5 points. Hogs is in second with 13. The listeners have 10. I have 6.5. We're not doing the math just yet for my elimination, but I can't be much better than the White Sox are in the Central right now.
The half-point bonus, Dan. That's what you got to look forward to.
Beast versus bench.
Is losing fun? Is losing fun?
Well, I'm going to talk about Kepler because you just slighted him. Sure, he gets to play a little bit more often. It's because he plays so well, Dan. He goes 5 for 9 in this one. I do want to say, too, Miranda also looked very good in this series, but Kepler, I think, was a little bit more impactful with all of the runs batted in he had. And so I think that your beast choice here, too, is it's fine. I have a couple of thoughts on it, but I'll let you talk about it.
So I got a lot of flack here for my faith in the Twins farm system here. And then here comes Zebby. Zebby Matthews started this year, I think, in like the Northwoods League. He was as far from the majors as you or I. I think he was like high A, right?
Okay,
but he's up.
Okay, last episode, Dan, you compared yourself to managing a baseball team with Grady Sizemore, and now you compare yourself to a top 100 prospect in baseball to you or I making the Twins roster. That's how far away he is.
Ogres are like onions. End of story.
I'm doubling down. Anyway, I'm just trying to connect my story with Zebby's. So this is what Rocco said afterwards. He says, that's the way you picture it in your mind. Whether you're the player, the manager, or a fan in the stands, he went out there and did it. He's accomplishing a lot of important career goals really quickly. Exactly what we wanted to see. And I maintain that when we sit down and write the story of this season, David, which I like to think that we're doing series by series with this podcast, we are going to look back as the season the Twins rookie pitchers carried them to a playoff appearance, and Joe Ryan made a heroic comeback in Game 5 of the ALCS. It's all part of the grand narrative, David.
He went 5 innings. I'm sorry, I can't get over this. Like, I get you're putting him as your beast, but Dan, 5 innings? Is there any other pitcher in the Twins rotation that you'd give the beast moniker to for pitching 5 innings?
Well, I think I've done it with SWR earlier in the season, right? I think David Festa, I think you did make him your beast when you were in like the post-Wrigley, euphoria or something a couple weeks ago.
I cannot be held responsible for the last 2 episodes. I had COVID. I had just gotten back from traveling. Right. I wasn't feeling well. I may have done this, Dan, but as we've said once on this podcast, anything that we've recorded before can't be held against us, Dan.
Well, fair enough. As for the bench, I went with Buxton. I talked about this a little bit earlier. It's the inconsistency. I love the guy. I think he's played like 90 games this year. I mean, he's had a good season overall, and he's been pretty healthy. But man, we saw moments here in Game 3 when Austin Martin couldn't get to a baseball in the outfield, where clearly Buxton is. We are missing him defensively when we watch this baseball team, even more than the offense, and he's been really good on both sides. So I hope that they really do take the cautious approach here, because I do think it would be good to put him on the injured list and bring somebody else up for this road trip, and hopefully he can come back the next time they're at home.
I mean, this is like that time you put Farmer on the bench after he got hit in the face with
that baseball. Is not no you put Farmer. Oh my gosh, rewriting history here, David.
Well, I'm gonna put Jeffers on my bench. He goes 1 for 8 with 5 strikeouts. He had that bad catcher interference call. He doesn't look good at the plate, Dan. And in the strikeout in Game 3 today, he came up, he had a big at bat. He swung at a ball, Dan, that was where the umpire's face is. And I cannot abide that, Dan. And here's what I think. I can see this happening in the Twins dugout. After Vazquez gets back from driveline, right? And they're getting ready for the next game. And he sees Jeffers in the locker room, and they're getting changed. They're getting into their uniforms, and they're getting ready to head out to the field. I can just see him, Dan, tapping him really hard in the shoulder and saying, hey, I'm the captain now. I'm the captain now.
I think this is what he said.
Kiss the cows.
Just, to lighten the mood. I think that's all we need to say about those guys. Let's go ahead and go forward to the rewind.
Rocco's Rewind.
I mean, some of our transitions, Dan, I mean, they're so professional and timely. The segue is just fantastic. I'm going to say this about Rocco. It's got to be easy to be a manager, Dan, when all of the decisions are basically made for you. And I don't know that there was any time in this series where Rocco had to make a real decision. I think that the matchups sort of played themselves. When you were going to bring in guys from the bullpen didn't really matter because you knew, as you've mentioned, once they pitch, you can just send them down to AAA. So it doesn't really matter if you have fresh arms or not. So well done, Rocco. You didn't get in the way, I guess, in this series. I would have liked to see a couple of guys come off the bench in Game 3 potentially. But again, Rocco loves those matchups, and it's just not going to happen.
You did mention sending guys down. Josh Winder did get sent back down to AAA after his good stretch here. So, yeah, go figure. He's burning through pitchers pretty fast. I'm going to kind of piggyback on that and say, Game 3, so he brings in Duran in the 7th when this is still kind of within reach. And you and I have asked for this in the past where, we'd like to see those high leverage guys come in moments where, the Twins are behind. And this is one of the rare times that he did it. Now, I think he did it because he hadn't pitched these guys in a while, but I thought it was still kind of surprising given the fact that they're going to Texas next. I think he did want to try to give the offense a go, I think based on how well they had hit earlier in the series. So I think what he did in the series did make some sense, but it does kind of vindicate the times when we get criticized by other people saying, no, you can't use your high leverage guys when you're behind, because sure enough, this can happen.
If history serves, Dan, I remember that Rocco likes to use his high leverage guys only when innings are left that the Twins tend to score a lot of runs as of late. So in this one, it was fine. In Game 1 and Game 2, they scored 2 runs apiece in the 7th inning. So Rocco thought, well, of course that means we're going to score some runs in the 7th inning.
I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious.
That sounder is going to be used again later, Dan, and I'm real excited to talk about it.
Minnesota moment.
So I have to go Game 2, top of 1. And it's the first batter that Zebby Matthews faces in his career. And it's a deep fly ball to left field. And Matt Wallner is out there. And Matt Wallner is not a fast dude, right? He's a big dude. He could play linebacker, but he's not fast. But my goodness, he breaks on this ball. He gets to the warning track. He jumps up. He snags the ball for an out. I don't think it was going to be a home run, but it was close enough that if you're Zebby Matthews on that mound, your heart is gone, right? Like it's either in your stomach or it's in your throat, but it's definitely not where it's supposed to be. But thank goodness for Matt Wallner to help Zebby Matthews start his career with a clean first inning.
Yeah, and then he was part of the offensive output in the bottom of the inning too that really staked him to a lead, which had to make his job easier. I'm going to go with a later moment in Game 2. It's when Kyle Farmer hits a home run. Now, Kyle Farmer has also been much maligned. We've been talking about how we wish he wouldn't have been brought back and Brooks Lee would have been able to stay on this team. But I think if the Twins are going to have a good finish here, I think Kyle Farmer's going to have to be a positive part of that. With Correa's lingering injury here, with some more of these young guys coming up, I mean, just how valuable would it be if at least Kyle Farmer was not an anchor on this lineup, but if he's somebody you can bat kind of 6, 7, 8 and just put together some good at-bats, not hit into some double plays and maybe have some singles here and there. Like, he doesn't need to hit a bunch of home runs, but he does need to be stable.
Yeah, I do wonder, I don't know why I have this comparison in my head a little bit, but I think in the offseason, what if they had let Kyle Farmer walk and they signed Michael Taylor? Because I think with the way we've seen center field play out with Manny Margot not really playing center field, and when he does, he's not playing an adequate center field. I think that even if Michael A. Taylor has struggled offensively, which he has this season a bit, I still think I would have rather had his secure hands in the outfield playing center than Kyle Farmer's whatever this is.
Are you a huge sports fan and want to learn more about the business of sports? The events, deals, media, or how leaders got started in their career? On the Farrell Sports Business Podcast, I talk to athletes, agents, marketers, TV execs, PR pros, and CEOs. I'm the host, Matt Farrell. I have worked 30 years in sports, including my Farrell Sports Consulting business. Join me for interviews with these industry unicorns. Go to your favorite podcast spot and look for the Farrell Sports Business Podcast.
That's a really good point because we just haven't seen anybody play a competent backup center field for the Twins, whether it's Margot, Castro, or Austin Martin in Game 3 of this one.
I just don't know how it can get any better.
Mauer's Musings.
So when you have a horse in the race, you just ride that horse to the end. So I'm going to ask again about the starting pitching rotation because this worked out so well last episode when we talked about this for me. So Ober and Lopez and Simeon Woods Richardson, Sim, as we like to call him, are locked in at this point, and SWR even gets to pitch 7 innings now. So that's big, right? My question for you, is it Festa and Zebby? Is Varland in there? Is it a 6-man rotation? Is it a piggyback? What happens now after watching these guys start? What do you think happens to the back 2 spots?
I think Festa is your 4th starter right now. I don't think that's going to change. I think he's going to be the guy making those starts. I think it really comes down between Zebby and Varland. I saw somebody on Twitter say this. I'm sorry, I can't give credit, but they basically said that like they're going to go with a 6-man rotation. Zebby and Varland each get 2 more starts, and then whoever has the better outings gets that spot. I don't really think they're going to do it that way, but it would be kind of cool if they set it up that way, right? Like, can you imagine Rocco in the pitcher's room saying, okay, guys, you each get 2 starts. Whoever does better gets the spot. Like, there's no way that that's happening. But Rocco seems like a guy who might do this with the egg toss. Like, he'd be like, guys, I just really don't want to be the bad guy. So how's we're going to solve this is we're going to do an egg toss. Like, it's going to be great.
I can't compete with you physically, and you're no match for my brains.
I don't know either. I think probably it's not going to be the 6-man rotation. I think I agree with you there, but I do want to give Zebby another go and just see what he can do maybe somewhere on this road trip. So we'll see. I can't imagine Rocco can keep cycling through these guys from AAA like this, but he could prove me wrong. What did you want to ask about?
Yeah, so mine's a little bit more broad here, thinking about the remaining games of the season. There's 42 games left, and right now we're without Correa. It's a bit unclear when he's going to return. I'm guessing Buxton's going to go on the IL, and Joe Ryan, we haven't heard anything for certain, but it certainly seems like he's done forever, basically.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's what we know for sure. Right now, we know who's healthy, we know who's not. 42 games left in, and I broke this down a little bit because I want to know, what do you think the Twins need to do to make the postseason? So of these 42 games, they have 5 of these series are against teams that are currently in the playoffs if they were to start today for 16 games. 3 of the teams that they have remaining are within 5 of the wild card. I thought 5 was a good number at this point to use as sort of the gauge. I thought about going with 3, but then there's not many teams in that 3-game window. And then finally, there's 5 teams that they play that are not in playoff contention. So the teams that are in the playoffs and the teams that are out of playoff contention, those games almost cancel. There's only 1 game difference between them, and then there's 9 games with teams who are competing for a wild card. I don't really know what they have to do to make the playoffs, but what do you think they need to do to make the postseason?
So right now, as we said earlier, they're 67 and 53. They're 3.5 up on the Red Sox, who are kind of the first team out in the playoffs, in the playoff picture. And then the Mariners are a game back from them, but they're kind of, jockeying with the Astros for the West. So I went through those series. I put down 24 wins. So a 24 and 18 finish. I think if they can do that, they get to 91 wins. I think that's going to be enough, because then you're asking the Red Sox to go, 27 and 17 or something like that. I don't know that they're going to be able to do that. I mean, that would be ahead of their pace. 24 and 18 is pretty close to the Twins' current pace. I think that feels pretty reasonable. And I thought I was trying to be pretty realistic, like saying, yeah, let's say they win 3 out of 4 in Texas, but then maybe 1 in San Diego, 1 against the Cards, and 1 against the Braves. Even if they just win those 6 games in the next 13, and that's a pretty tough stretch there, I think they should be able to. What about you?
Yeah, I think they might do a little bit better. Because I think that they've gotten through a lot of the hard teams that they had remaining. So 2 of these 5 teams that are playoff teams currently are the Royals and the Guardians. And again, Dan, I can't say it enough. I don't think this Guardians team is nearly as good as their record. I'm so mad at the Cubs, who couldn't put up even the semblance of a fight against the Guardians. They laid down for the Guardians. I do not understand that team. Why are you not trying? At least you guys are pretty close distance-wise. Pretend there's some sort of rivalry here to get a little bit excited. But every time I looked at those box scores, Dan, to see what the Guardians did, they won through, it seems like, miraculous fashion, Dan. It's driving me absolutely insane.
So baseline question then, are the Twins making the playoffs, yes or no?
Yeah, we've said that the entire season. We've gotten mocked by Hogs. I think at this point, the way that they've played without Correa and the way that they've played without Buxton and Lewis at different stretches, I think this team is a postseason team, especially if those guys get healthy. Can you imagine, Dan, if you had those 3 guys healthy going into September and one of these guys from AAA, either Zebby or Festa or Varland, figures it out? This team can make a run, Dan. They can do it.
I believe this is going to be our finest hour. I believe. I'm going to keep saying that, David, throughout
if you keep saying it, I'm going to have to cut it as a sounder, and then we're going to have to wait for you to find it every time. It's going to be a whole thing.
All right, let's go on here and grade this series.
series grades.
Yeah, I'm going to give them a B. Game 3 was just disappointing. Lots of opportunities, and if the Royals only go 2 for 11 with runners in scoring position, you should be able to do better than that, Dan. But you only go 1 for 5. And again, it's shocking to me that the pitching was never the issue in any of these games, but even in Game 3, 4 runs should not be seen as Everest. And this offense, Dan, is not like they were in April. They are a much more confident team. They can put up more than 3 runs in an inning, and we don't really bat an eye at that, Dan. They should have been able to put a few more runs on the board to support the pitching staff that really has been lifting this team up as of late.
Yeah, so I went with advanced retreat a 9 out of 10 because I think you take 2 of 3 at home against the Royals. That's what you needed to do, right? You keep them at bay. And as far as well-played baseball, I still went with a 9 out of 10 because the pitching was so good given the circumstances. Cole Reagans is actually a pretty good pitcher for the Royals. He was an all-star. He's got an ERA of 3.18. You're one big hit away, but I thought the Royals outplayed them in that game, just had way more opportunities. So went with a 9 out of 10 there too. I think an A-. I just think this was a good result, all things considered, especially now it's a 4-3 homestand against the 2 teams that you're jockeying with in the AL Central.
I don't know, Jack. It looked like Herbeck pulled him off the bag.
Herbie's headlines.
A quick follow-up here, Dan, on the last episode. Eddie Rosario has signed a minor league deal with the, drumroll please, the Mets.
This is what I don't get about that. These are the teams that should know Eddie Rosario the best, right? It's another NL East team. Like, you would think they'd be like, I don't know about this choice.
Yeah, I don't really know. I don't really have anything to say about that. I just thought it was funny that he signed somewhere. But I see you have a note here about the current standings in the NL?
Yeah, so we've talked throughout this season how good the AL Central has been. Well, for the first time this season, I believe, the NL West has actually passed them as the best division in baseball in terms of kind of the top 3 teams. But it's pretty remarkable what these teams are doing. The Dodgers, they lost today, but they're 71-50. The Diamondbacks are nearly caught up. They're 69-53. They've won 9 out of 10, including 6 in a row. The Padres are 69-53, 9 out of 10, 3 in a row. That is going to be a fun division to watch. Those 3 teams are basically locked in for playoff spots as much as one can be at this point in the year. So it's good for Twins fans who maybe want to watch a game after the Twins game. You're going to be able to catch a lot of those teams on that West Coast late window of baseball.
2 other notes here, Dan. First of all, I just love this so much. Mookie Betts, he refused to stay with the team in Milwaukee because they stay at a hotel known as the Pfister Hotel, and I guess it's haunted. And so Mookie Betts must subscribe to some of these thoughts because he just will not stay there, Dan.
I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious.
Doesn't surprise me at all. For players who won't change their underwear if they're on a hitting streak, yeah, I wouldn't stay in a haunted hotel either.
It's sort of like in Seinfeld where they all complain about George booking them in the Ramada. Like, why wouldn't you just book them at a different hotel that's not haunted, Dan?
What a transition.
All rise for Dan's Judge Love.
You make a Yankee reference, and now I get to talk about Aaron Judge. He hit his 300th career home run. He did that faster than any player in Major League Baseball history. This guy, Hall of Famer, first ballot, David, and a great guy.
So my question to you, Dan, being the judge aficionado that you are, so Aaron Judge is currently 32 years old. I don't know how long he's planning to play baseball.
I'm not dead.
But where do you think he'll finish on the all-time homer list?
Yeah, so I think he gets to 500. There's 28 guys who've hit 500. Can he get to 600? That would be tricky because he's 32 years old. But let's say he hits 30 a year on average for 7 more years. That at least gets him to 500. I think he's going to be like a 550 guy. I think he's, somewhere. Manny Ramirez is 15th at 555. Let's say he's going to be 16th.
If he stays healthy, Dan, and this is me saying it, this isn't you saying it, I think he hits that 600 threshold.
That would be fun because he would be a guy who we think is going to do it without steroids. And you look at that list and you're like, I don't know about these guys. Alex Rodriguez, right? So we'll see.
Okay, let's go ahead and make our picks here for the upcoming Rangers series, and let's get out of here, Dan.
And we'll see you tomorrow night. Puckett's Picks.
The listeners are going to return back, Dan, to the man they should always pick. They're going to take Royce Lewis off of the board.
He's the one.
And then it'll go to you, Dan.
I'm going to stick with him. I'm standing by Matt Wallner. I'm just waiting for the 2 home run series. I think this is going to be the one. He's got 4 games to do it. I'll stick with Matt.
Fair enough. Well, with that, then, Hogs is going to go with Miranda.
I am not throwing away my shot.
I don't know if this is a real pick or a fake one like he does to try and get to pick second next time. It seems like a real pick to me, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think he had a great series. He's looking much more on track.
I was looking, Dan, because I was trying to figure out if I'd picked Royce Lewis before, and I hadn't. So obviously I can't pick him. But do you know who has been quite good for me outside of Carlos Correa?
Max Kepler?
My guy, Max Kepler. Absolutely. It's about time that we get Max back into the winner's circle of Puckett's Picks. quite excited to have Kepler back on my dance card, Dan.
The guy had 4 RBI. He hadn't had an RBI in like 2 weeks, David. This is, well, we'll see.
Maybe he went to Grand Slam like Vazquez did. Same idea.
Driveline is not Grand Slam. These are different places, David.
Are you sure? No, I'm pretty sure it's the same thing. But, you know, he goes in a little booth and he hits the balls and he gets the tickets. It's the same idea.
Something like that. Something like that. Folks, if you like what you hear, please tell a friend. You can follow us on X at Min for the Win and find our Min for the Win Facebook and Instagram pages. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast on your favorite platform so you're notified when new episodes are available. And if you could leave us a rating or a like, we'd greatly appreciate it. If you'd like to support the show further, you can find us on Patreon. The link is in the description. Thank you for listening. And as always, go Twins. That'll wrap up another episode of Min for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kuvas and Dan Thompson, 2 avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Thanks so much for listening, and as always, go Twins.